Hey guys, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we're going to look at the story of Rebekah at the well. Let's dive right into it. So we are looking at Genesis chapter 24. We're going to pick up with verse 11. So let's read the passage. And it came to pass that when the servant of Abraham had heard their words, he bowed himself down to the ground before the Lord. Then the servant took some jewelry from his master, from Abraham's hand, and placed it on Rebekah's hand, the one that he had chosen. And he said, "Whose is this hand? Whose is this hand that I have laid it in?" And she said, "It is I, the servant's daughter." Now he took a veil and covered her face and took her to the camel. And he said, "Get up, let us go." So she got up, and they took the veil and covered her face and set her on the camel. Then they took all these things, the jewelry and the goods and all the gifts, and placed them on the camel, and the servant still held her hand till he had brought her to Isaac, his master. So now I know that was a lot, but there's a couple things I want to point out in this passage. First of all, notice what the servant did in verse 11. It says here, he bowed himself down to the ground before the Lord. Why do you think he did this? Well, because he knew God had answered his prayer. That is why he bowed down before the Lord and probably gave God some kind of sacrifice or offering. And then, verse 12, he gives Rebekah a ring and some bracelets. He takes this stuff from Abraham from his master and puts it on her hands. And then he asks her a very important question. Listen to what he says. He says, "Whose is this hand? Whose is this hand that I have laid it in?" And what she says is very interesting. She says, "It is I, the servant's daughter." And what she does is she identifies herself not by her name, but by her relationship to this servant. Interesting thing to note. Why do you think she did that? I believe she did that because she wanted the focus to be on God's plan, not on her. Now, some people say that she was afraid that this servant was trying to force her into something that she didn't want to do, but I don't get that impression at all. I think that she understood that God had orchestrated this meeting and that he had a plan for her life. And so she was simply submitting herself to God's plan. And listen, verse 13, it says that he took a veil and covered her face. And you might be saying, why did he cover her face? What's the significance of covering her face? Well, there's a couple things. First, it was probably custom in those days for women to cover their faces, especially when they were around men that weren't family members. You see, women unveiled themselves only to their husband, their father, and maybe their brother. So it was very improper for a woman to be seen in public with her face uncovered. Secondly, it shows that this woman was beautiful. And so by covering her face, it just emphasizes how beautiful she was. Now let's look at verse 15. It says, "And he took all these things, the jewelry and the goods and all the gifts, and placed them on the camel. And the servant still held her hand till he had brought her to Isaac, his master." I love that the servant held her hand. What a gentleman. And I love also that he brought her to Isaac. Notice that he didn't leave her at a distance and say, "Hey, look over there. There's your girl, Abraham's son. Take her and marry her," right? No, he didn't do that. He actually brought her to Isaac. and I think that shows respect and dignity for both Rebekah and Isaac. Now, before we close, let me answer 2 questions that I think are important. The first question is, who was Rebekah? Well, Rebekah was the daughter of Bethuel and Milcah, and she was the sister of Laban. In other words, she was the sister of Jacob's wife. Now, the second question is, why was she at the well? Well, there's a couple reasons. First, it was probably customary for women to go and draw water from the wells. I mean, they didn't have water running through their taps, right? So they had to go and fetch water. Secondly, wells were the place where people went to meet and greet each other. And remember, the servant of Abraham had asked God specifically to direct him to the right woman, the woman that he should marry off Isaac. And so he said, God, please make it clear to me who I should marry Isaac off to. And he looked for signs. And the sign was that she would give him a drink and also draw water for his camels. And that's exactly what Rebekah did. So this wasn't just a chance encounter. This was God orchestrating 2 people coming together. I hope this story inspires you. Until next time, Shalom.